As stated in a previous post of mine, I work as a cleaner in a very large downtown mall in a very populated city. Last week I was doing my job as usual when I noticed a table with 2 trays full of empty takeout wrappers from the food court. I was about to dispose of them when I noticed there were a few fries left and a coat hanging on the back of the bench. I immediately left it be and continued on with working. About an hour later, I realized the coat was still there with the wrappers untouched. I cleared the table and gave the coat a quick look. Over. It was a very thin spring jacket from Walmart, had the George band tag. There was no weight to the coat indicating anything was in the pockets. We have policies in regards to stuff like this. If it's transient, we immediately throw it out. If it's something like paperwork with sensitive information mail, something expensive, we bring it to the security office. If it's a wallet or purse, we have to stay with it while security comes to retrieve it. If it's something like jackets, gloves, hats, we place it next to garbage cans closest to where we found it. The cans have a large counter area for this. If it is not collected by the end of the night, we throw it out. It's unfortunate, but the building is quite large with thousands of people going through it every day. If we were to put everything in the lost and found, we would need a very large space to keep it all. So I walked 15 feet over to the closest counter space and placed it there before going on my last 15-minute break. During my break, the mall was closing, so I guess this entitled dad, we'll call him Bill, started making his way back to collect his stuff. I was just getting back on the floor when I get a call on the radio that Bill was asking about his coat and food that he had left. I told him where to look for his jacket and went to filling out my paperwork. All of a sudden, there's a clean-cut, tall man, Bill, stomping over to me, dragging his 7-year-old kid behind him, screaming at me. I calmly tried to talk to him and explain why I moved the coat and where it was, but he didn't want to listen to any of it, demanding that I go get his coat. So I bring him over to where I had left the coat. I apologize to Bill and state that mall employees are not responsible for personal belongings left unattended. I then suggested that he go check with the security office because another customer might have brought it to them. Bill began to scream so loud at me that his face was turning red and spit was flying everywhere, saying how he left it there along with his food to show that he was a customer while he continued shopping. He felt that by leaving the empty food wrapper showing that he bought something in the building meant that it was my responsibility to watch and protect his coat. He then started insisting that I owe him 2 meals because he wasn't done with the food. I've dealt with similar situations before, so I try to keep my composure while I explain to him that there was no food other than a few fries left and that mall employees are not responsible for stuff that people leave unattended. Then I called security. It turned out that Bill had his car house keys in the pocket of his coat and he purposely left it there because, although I didn't see him, he seen me and that it was my job to watch his stuff. His poor son was crying, but this didn't stop Bill from freaking out, trying to drag anyone passing by into the situation, pointing at me like I was the bad guy. I only had an hour left in my shift, and by the time security was able to walk him down to the office, my shift was done, and I had to go tear my cart down to leave. Bill came back the next morning demanding to speak with my manager. While talking to her, he kept demanding that I be fired, but my manager just kept apologizing, stating that his coat was not my responsibility and that I was only following protocol. So yesterday, Bill apparently showed up to the mall again, this time walking around talking to any store employees he could find that would listen to his sob story about his wife dying, etc., to then start demanding for them to tell him my name and address because he plans on suing me for his pain and suffering for having to walk home and the costs of the 2 meals, expensive jacket, and the key replacement. Most of the people he spoke to were even sure of who he was talking about. Never mind any of the other information. Even the ones who did would never give out any of that info, but instead messaged me on Facebook giving me the heads up. I don't understand how someone can feel so entitled that they expect cleaners to be coat check at a mall without even speaking to them first. So, you know how life throws curveballs at you, right? Well, let me tell you about the crazy roller coaster ride I've been on, all thanks to my lovely neighbor, Karen. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm all about living and let live, but this woman takes it to a whole new level. So, there's me and my hubby, just your regular folks living in the know. So, regular neighborhood. We got this cat, Cleo, a white and brown beauty we adopted when we were visiting Egypt. She's got this vibe, like she's seen the pyramids or something. Anyways, Cleo's our little ball of fur, and we adore her. Now, Karen, oh boy, where do I start? This woman, she's got more drama in her life than a soap opera. She's always eyeballing us, messing with our trash like it's her personal treasure trove. It's annoying, but we mostly shrugged it off as Karen being Karen. Fast forward to the day things got real. Hubby calls me up in the middle of the day, all frantic. Turns out our house got broken into while he was at work. I'm panicking, thinking, great. There goes the TV and maybe my favorite mug. But no, nothing was missing. Nada. Zilch. Except for Cleo. You see, Cleo ain't just any cat. She's been with us through thick and thin, a furry confidante who's witnessed our highs and lows. She's got this magical way of curling up on your lap when you're feeling down. And suddenly the world's a better place. Losing her. It felt like losing a piece of my heart. So there we are, back from our short trip, and I'm on the hunt for Cleo. Trash cans under the bed, you name it. Hubby's trying to console me, but I can't shake off the feeling that something ain't right. Then I find it. Cleo's collar destroyed and tossed in the trash. Now, I'm not Sherlock Holmes, but something's fishy, and it ain't the cat food. I'm not the type to cause a ruckus, but Cleo was family, and you don't mess with family. So I hit the streets, or rather, the neighborhood. It's like a feline version of Where's Waldo. I'm calling her name, knocking on doors, and getting weird looks from the neighbors who probably think I've lost it. And then it happens. I'm standing in front of Karen's house, and I hear it. Cleo's distinct meow. My heart does a somersault. I look at Karen's place like, seriously, lady, I ain't one for confrontation, but Cleo's more than just a cat. She's a part of us. I knock on Karen's door, trying to keep my cool. She opens it, all innocent, like, hey, what's up? I'm like, cut the crap, Karen. Where's Cleo? She gives me this blank look. Oh, your cat, right? Haven't seen her. Now, I'm not a detective, but I'm also not an idiot. Cleo's meowing is practically echoing from her house. I push past Karen, and there she is, our precious Cleo looking terrified. I'm fuming. What the hell, Karen? You took my cat? She tries to act innocent. Your cat? I don't know what you're talking about. I point at Cleo. That's my cat, and that's her collar in my trash. Karen stammers. Well, she just wandered in. I thought she was a stray. I'm not buying it. Cleo's giving me the get me out to here look. I scoop her up and we make a beeline for home. I don't have time for Karen's nonsense. I get Cleo settled and she's purring like she's just won the lottery. I'm relieved, but I'm not letting Karen off the hook. I march over to her house, and this time, I'm not knocking politely. Listen, Karen, I don't know what game you're playing, but Cleo is not your plaything. She's family. Got it? Karen tries to play innocent, but I'm not having it. I didn't mean any harm. I just thought she was a stray, trying to help. Help my foot. I give her the stare of 1,000 angry cat moms and say, stay away from Cleo. Stay away from us. Got it? So there I am, standing in front of Karen, Cleo safely in my arms, and she has the audacity to tell me I can't have my own cat back. The nerve of this woman, I swear. I take a deep breath, trying to keep my cool, but I can feel the anger simmering beneath the surface. You can't have the cat, she says, like she's the queen of the universe. I narrow my eyes at her. Oh, I can't, huh? Well, Karen, let me enlighten you. This cat right here, I give Cleo a little pat, is mine. She's got a home, and that home is with me and my husband. Now, step aside. Karen crosses her arms, a smug smile on her face. You can't just barge in here and take things. Now, normally, I'm not one to threaten, but she's pushed me to the edge. Corinne, you messed with the wrong person. I had security cameras, and they caught you breaking into my house. You want to play this game? Fine. I'll call the cops for break and entry. Fine. I'll call the cops for break and entry. Her eyes widen a bit, and for the first time, I see a flicker of uncertainty. But she's not one to back down easily. You're bluffing. I pull out my phone and make a show of dialing 911. Guess we'll find out, won't we? As the phone rings, I glance at Cleo, who's looking at Karen like she's some kind of villain in a cat superhero movie. The cops pick up and I explain the situation. They tell me they'll send someone over. Karen's face is turning paler by the second. Look, let's not involve the cops. It's just a cat. Just a cat. I can't believe the audacity. Karen, Cleo is family, and breaking into someone's house, that's a crime. Before Karen can protest further, I hear the sirens in the distance. The cops arrive and I lay out the whole saga for them. Curran's stuttering, trying to come up with some excuse, but it's falling apart faster than a house of cards in a hurricane. I mentioned the security cameras, and that's when she really starts to panic. The cops are professional, but you can tell they're enjoying the drama. One of them asks, "Mind if we take a look at those cameras?" I nod, and we all head over to my place. Sure enough, the cameras caught Karen red-handed, breaking and entering 101, courtesy of my lovely neighbor. The cops turn to Karen, all serious now. "Ma'am, you're under arrest for breaking and entering." She starts protesting, but it's futile. I press charges because, you know what? Enough is enough. Cleo might be back, but this woman needs a lesson. You can't just mess with people's lives and expect no consequences. As they lead Karen away in handcuffs, I feel a mix of satisfaction and disbelief. I never thought I'd be in a situation where my neighbor would try to steal my cat and break into my house. Life is wild, man. So I'm a professional chef, and I have been for a few years, and in Australia Apprentice, chefs are trained in a sort of college where we learn about 150 recipes. Now, many of the recipes are provided to the students in bulky, finicky booklets that you wouldn't really want to take anywhere with you. So I started writing some of the recipes in a separate notebook along with some other recipes I'd learned from coworkers or family members, and created a sort of pseudo cookbook, and I would often bring this book into the kitchen. So I would remember ingredient quantities and cooking times, and eventually I would leave the book in the kitchen pretty much around the clock. What I soon found out was that some of the other chefs in the kitchen were using my cookbook to check official recipes for the restaurant we worked for, as typically the head chef would have to tell them, and this got annoying for everyone. And this restaurant was a part of a popular sports club in the local area. So consistency was extremely important to management. As such, having a written record of the new recipes or changes to long-time recipes was very important. As it turned out, management had stopped making changes to the official club recipe book a few months before I even started, so my book became the de facto official recipe book. For a while, this was no issue to me, and I kept adding new recipes to it throughout the next few years. However, after my third year working there, I finished my studies and became fully qualified as a chef. So I suddenly became more expensive to keep on as a staff member, and as such, management started looking for any reason to replace me with a new apprentice. Eventually, they found someone to replace me and gave a half-assed reason for firing me and told me to take all my things and leave as I could no longer offer what they were looking for. So I took everything I owned and left, including the notebook with all the club's recipes. For a few days, not a whole lot happened, but slowly the club's reviews started complaining about bland food, dry cakes, inconsistent classic recipes, and every other food-related thing you could think of. At one point, there was 50 negative reviews in a single day, which for our town was a massive amount of negative reviews in one day. It felt pretty damn good since I felt they deserved it and left me unemployed on short notice. However, I was quickly offered a new job by a smaller restaurant whose owner knew me from the sports club kitchen. The malicious compliance. After about a week, I received multiple calls, and after answering one, I heard one of the higher managers at the sports club asking if I could return the book as the kitchen needed it back. I obviously laughed and said firmly that it was my book full of my recipes, so it wasn't going anywhere near them, reminding them that they had told me I could no longer offer what they were looking for. The manager clearly began to panic as he offered to give me my job back and just let bygones be bygones. I already had a new job, so I completely brushed off this offer and ignored him. I hung up pretty soon after that. I started putting the recipes from my book on the new restaurant's menu, and it was beginning to attract a few regular customers of the sports club, so I quickly found myself with more and more responsibility and command within the kitchen to the point that about a third of the menu was from my book. Now, this slow trickle of sports club regulars picked up speed after about 3 months and led to several high-level managers from the club deciding to visit the restaurant I'd helped build and virtually demanded I give them my cookbook, claiming it would be much more beneficial for the community if they had it. My head chef laughed in their faces and told them to piss off. It's been about 2 years, and my head chef and I have a very positive relationship, and the customer base we have at the restaurant is better than ever. We didn't take every customer from the big club, but it was enough damage to their profits to scare a few investors away and also lead to a decent bit of damage to one of the higher managers' reputations. Furthermore, the recipe issues and negative reviews lead to the majority of the kitchen quitting, and according to one of my old colleagues, they cited the lack of support and organization from upper management as the final reasons everyone was quitting, and this led to an even larger dip in the quality of the restaurant food. I also get paid significantly more at this restaurant than I was at the sports club. The night had unfolded in a dazzling array of success and celebration, a private happy hour for new clients hosted by the prestigious environmental firm. The venue, a charming private restaurant, boasted a reserved balcony overlooking the beach, offering a breathtaking view of the Southern California waterfront bathed in the hues of a perfect sunset. I, the protagonist of this momentous evening, reveled in the glow of accomplishment, surrounded by like-minded professionals, toasting the new connections and opportunities that seemed to paint my life with the colors of the American dream. As the evening wound down, I made my way to the valet counter to settle the tab and retrieve my car. Engrossed in a conversation with my coworker, my mind still resonated with the success of the evening. The world was a picture of triumph, and I, the artist who had painted it with strokes of professional victories and personal milestones. However, the serenity of the night was disrupted by the abrupt arrival of an impatient driver, his aggressive demeanor evident as he carelessly pulled up in a dated Mercedes, the remnants of its former glory hanging on with yellow seats and gold trim, an emblem of entitlement that seemed to declare, "Look out, ladies, I have arrived." His frustration was palpable as he shot me a disdainful glance, conducting a thorough visual inspection from head to toe. Undeterred, I continued my conversation, choosing to ignore the brewing storm in the form of a man and his outdated chariot. The tension escalated as the disgruntled driver, unable to bear his perceived slight any longer, boomed in a stern voice, "Excuse me, senor, aren't you going to park my car?" The words were laden with disappointment, a tone that demanded immediate rectification and carried the unspoken threat of wanting to talk to my manager. Turning my head to face him, I maintained my composure and calmly responded, "I'd love to, but I don't work here." My attention returned to the valet counter as, almost on cue, my spotless 2023 car arrived. With a final glance back at the disgruntled driver, I couldn't help but observe the priceless expression on his face. A sudden realization dawning that he had hastily judged me based on appearances. In that fleeting moment, as I tipped the valet and settled into the comfort of my sleek car, I recognized the weight of a prevailing societal issue. The uncomfortable truth of racial profiling had reared its head, an unwarranted assumption fueled by stereotypes and preconceived notions. As a Mexican man donned in a black coat, shirt, and pants, I had become a canvas on which biases were projected, a common occurrence in the diverse landscape of Southern California. Despite the victory of the evening, an undercurrent of guilt threatened to tarnish the sheen of success. It was a familiar dance, one where my body instinctively wanted to assume a submissive posture, offering apologies and wearing a facial expression that screamed, "Don't fire me." But in that moment, cocooned within the confines of my luxurious car, I pondered the absurdity of it all. How often had I felt the need to apologize for existing in a world that couldn't see past the color of my skin? As the engine purred to life, I drove away from the scene, leaving behind a frustrated man who had learned a valuable lesson in judgment. The night, once a celebration of triumph, had morphed into a poignant reminder that the American dream, while attainable, could still be tinged with the bitter aftertaste of prejudice.